Hi y'all, this is Misty and Trace with Two Texas Lobsters and Sometimes a Crab Reacts.
Today we've got a great video. It's called Why Did the Chicken Cross the Road? Chickens and Forgotten History. So a lot of you don't know, we do have a farm, and right now we have a lot of chickens. They're like Brahmas. We raise them for eggs. We don't eat them, but and they're more like family, right?
Yeah, pets.
Yeah, well, I don't know, pets. But we do enjoy having them around, and we thought maybe you might be interested in this video. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get on into Why Did the Chicken Cross the Road? Chickens and Forgotten History.
If you look outside your window on a nice spring day, you might assume that robins and sparrows are the most numerous birds in the world, but no, not even close. Or could it be, say, pigeons or seagulls? Again, not even close. If you looked it up, you might find note of the red-billed quaila, a weaver bird of sub-Saharan Africa that occurs in astounding numbers and whose population is estimated to exceed 1 billion, and yet still it is not the most numerous bird on Earth. If you even went back in time to the passenger pigeon, the most numerous wild species ever found, who at its height had a population estimated to exceed 5 billion, it would not even come close to the most numerous bird on Earth today, Gallus domesticus. And how the bird that most of us simply know as the chicken came to be the most numerous bird on Earth is history that deserves to be remembered. The exact story of the domestication of the chicken is not completely clear. As domesticated birds have interbred with wild birds, the DNA story is muddled. Most scholars agree that the chicken was domesticated from the wild red jungle fowl, a member of the pheasant family that still exists in large parts of Southeast Asia today, although the species is threatened by hybridization with domestic chickens.
Now, those are the mean ones.
Yeah.
Those little tiny ones, like with the big feathers.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a rooster too. Roosters are mean.
Well, our rooster's not.
Well, yeah, but like Brahmas.
I think a lot of roosters are mean. Yeah. So when I was a kid, I was about 8 years old, and we had a farm, and a chicken just like that decided he didn't like me, and
chased you.
I still have nightmares.
However, genes of a similar gray jungle fowl found on the Indian subcontinent have been identified in modern breeds of domesticated chicken as well, leading some scientists to suggest that chickens may have been domesticated in multiple domestication events in areas of South Asia and China. The domestication might have occurred as far back as 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, and from Asia, domesticated chickens spread to the Middle East, Africa, where chickens had an advantage over local guinea fowl who had the tendency to fly away, Europe, and Oceania. While chickens were only thought to have come to the Americas after contact with Europe, there is some evidence that there were chickens in South America in the pre-Columbian era, supporting the still somewhat controversial theory that there was contact in the Americas with Polynesian peoples. Surprisingly, most scientists agree that the original domestication of chickens was done for the purpose of cockfighting, not for eggs or meat. Male chickens, called cocks, have a natural aggression towards one another and have a sharp spur on their heel that they use to attack. Chickens bred for the purpose of fighting are called gamecocks and are selected for strength and stamina. Cockfights are sometimes used as a form of ritual sacrifice, and fighting cocks represent virility. The sport, which often...
That is illegal here. They still have illegal cockfighting. But, and it's a horrible thing. I don't know why they still can, do that, or how they can do that, but there's a lot of money to be.
There's nothing else in this world.
Yeah, right. Well, there's a lot of money to be made on things. It's like it's gambling.
Yeah, I know. You're right.
Included wagering alongside religious and cultural elements, spread from the Indus Valley to Greece and Rome, and is depicted in ancient mosaics. The fighting chickens would be placed in a shallow depression that would serve as their ring where they would fight, and that was called a cockpit. As the controls of a ship, where the pilot might steer the ship, were often placed in an open well on the deck, it resembled the cockpit and so came to be known as the cockpit. And then that term, which refers to where the controls of the vessel are, was eventually carried over to aircraft, where the spot that controlled the aircraft was called a cockpit, and also to race cars. Although now banned in many parts of the world, the sport continues, both legally and illegally, throughout the world, and might be the world's oldest continuously played sport. Despite this use, the utility of domesticated chickens as a food source is obvious. They produce food both in the form of eggs and meat. They require relatively few resources to maintain, foraging readily on insects and food scraps. They are poor flyers and relatively easily confined in protected cages at night. They are easily portable on boats and ships, and, relative to larger domesticated animals, they provide a single meal, rather than leaving the problem of safely storing the excess food when, say, slaughtering a cow or a goat. Eggs are also easier to preserve and transport than milk.
Chickens are so dead useful. Mm-hmm. We have enjoyed having... They are, aren't they? We have enjoyed having chickens, and they're low cost. They're easy to keep. When I clean my coop out once a year. Right now, with what the government, our sinister, corrupt government is trying to do is kill all the chickens for the bird flu. I'm not a registered nurse. I'm here to tell you that's a lie. And they're trying to kill all the chickens, which raises all the price of the eggs, if you can find them now. And the supply chain is screwed. Thank you, Joe Biden. Which causes the feed to go up in price. Let me tell you something, guys. Self-sufficiency is the best thing you can do for your family.
And what the government does not want us to do.
They do not want you to be self-sufficient. They want you to rely on the government. And we're not trying to come across as anti-government. We love our country. Misty is one of the greatest Americans that I know. She loves our country. I love our country. We do not agree with what the administration is currently doing, but this kind of goes in with the whole chicken theme. Buy you some chickens. We lived in an HOA, and guess what, Forney? We had chickens, and a lot of them. Do something about it. You know, we didn't have a rooster because they are loud, and you can't have roosters, but your city ordinance trumps your HOA every single time. So buy a few chickens, have a few eggs. When COVID hit and you couldn't find an egg in the store to save your life, people started coming to us for eggs. The same people that were saying, "Oh, you're not supposed to."
That were complaining.
Yeah, you're not supposed to have chickens. Shame on you. We're going to report you. Those are the same people looking for eggs. But chickens are wonderful animals. They provide great breakfast.
Yeah.
In fact, the most healthy breakfast you can have. Free range, eat some chickens. Very easy, low cost. Anyway, let's get back on into the video.
Relative to wild birds, domesticated chickens are less aggressive, grow larger, and produce larger eggs earlier and more frequently. If chickens were domesticated for the purpose of cockfighting, it is clear that the domesticated breeds were developed as a source of food. Chickens came somewhat late to Egypt, given its long history, but Egypt produced a new technology in chicken cultivation that awed the ancient world: egg incubators. So significant that they were mentioned by Aristotle, who incorrectly supposed that the incubation was done by burying...
That's amazing.
First chicken house.
Well, I mean, So, put down in the comments below, because I'm kind of confused. Did they invent the incubator? We have incubators here, even, and where we're staying, and we've hatched chickens, but did they?
I don't know. Let's watch and see.
Burying the eggs in dung, the Egyptians were reportedly protective of the secrets of their incubation ovens, which allowed chickens to be produced faster and more reliably. If hens are used to incubate eggs using the natural process, the hen will stop laying for a period. Mm-hmm. But if the eggs are instead removed and artificially incubated, the hen will produce more eggs. Incubators also allow chickens to be incubated year-round, whereas chickens in colder climates could not generally keep eggs warm enough to produce chicks in the winter months.
That's amazing.
Despite Europeans knowing of the Egyptian incubators in the time of the ancient Greeks, the operation of the ovens, which set the eggs in baskets in a chamber below a higher chamber...
Look at that.
So it looks like they build fires. See where his
Over
face
there?
is looking in? No, see where his face is looking in?
Yeah.
So it looks like that they
oven.
build fires right there in the back and the front, and then it has the hole where the fire looks like goes in a circle basically and just heats the whole chamber.
Can you imagine that? Because we've hatched babies in our incubator. Can you imagine that?
No. Cheaper on electricity.
where a smoldering fire was maintained, was not clearly understood and described by Europeans until French scientist René-Antoine Purcell de Rémur gained access to the ovens and described their methods.
Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, seriously.
Can you say it even once?
In 1750. The process required skilled handlers who maintained the fires and turned the eggs. Wood is relatively rare in Egypt, so the smoldering fires, kept in dome-shaped chambers that allowed smoke to escape while keeping rain out, usually used the more common Egyptian fuel of dried dung, which was likely the genesis of Aristotle's misconception about the eggs being buried in dung. Purcell produced his own design for an egg incubator, but the colder European climates required more robust fuel, and a practical modern egg incubator was not invented until coal lamp incubators were perfected in the 1800s. Chickens and eggs were popular in ancient Rome, where the omelet was invented. At one point, the fattening of chickens was prohibited in Rome, and the eating of chicken limited to one per meal in order to preserve supplies of wheat. The response was to invent the capon, a castrated rooster, which can grow up to twice its normal size.
Oh, wow.
Chicken was one of the more common proteins in medieval...
So, if I'm not mistaken, Max Miller, Tasting History, if you haven't already checked out that channel, please do. It's a wonderful channel. Max Miller, Tasting History. He did a capon dish. I think that, and I'm not even going to go into detail. Check that out. That's a wonderful series to watch.
Europe, where larger animals could be prohibitively expensive, while chickens were relatively inexpensive to acquire and keep. But archaeologists noted a significant increase in chicken bones in the archaeological record, starting about 900 to 1000 AD. Historians have proposed a number of reasons for the sudden increase in chicken consumption in the high medieval period, including increasing urbanization and standards of living. But the largest driving factor may have been religious practice. Benedictine monks of the period started enforcing rules around religious fasting that included a prescription against the meat of four-legged animals, but which allowed the meat of birds and eggs. As there were at the time around 130 fasting days a year in common Christian practice, chicken and eggs quickly grew in popularity as favored proteins. In fact, an Oxford University study in 2017 of chicken bones from the high medieval period found that their DNA was rapidly altering during the period as people were selecting for larger, less aggressive species that produce more and larger eggs.
That's where you started to become someone who grew your animals, and they became what you wanted them to become, right? More meatier, faster laying, quicker laying.
And thus, Christian feasting practices in Europe literally changed the very genetic structure of domesticated chickens. And if it seems strange that religion affected chickens, understand that the symbolic importance of chickens was not at all new. As previously mentioned, cockfighting had both religious and cultural elements. But the symbolism of chickens goes much farther than that. Eggs were a symbol of fertility and the coming of spring in pagan rituals long before the tradition of hiding Easter eggs was described by Christians as being symbolic of Jesus' emergence from the tomb and resurrection. The Persian religion of Zoroastrianism saw the
you're right, it was pagan first, but there are a lot of Christian holidays and Christian days of recognition that were pagan first. There are. Christmas is one of them.
So
Easter
we should have
another.
a holiday, a day off of work to celebrate chickens. That's what I took from
Chicken
that.
Day.
Chicken Day.
If you are interested in supporting us on our new drive for a federal holiday for chickens, please put down in the comments below.
And since all the holidays seem like they're on Monday, we're going to make this one on Friday.
We should. That is beautiful. We should do that. That way we only have, like a 3-day work week.
This is what we'll do. We'll do the Chicken Day the Friday before Groundhog Day. So that way you can get a 4-day weekend.
Brilliant. This is why I married the woman. So if you have a name that you would like to give Chicken Day, please put down in the comments. We would love it. And I'll tell you what. You think I'm kidding? Put it down in the comments, and I will make sure that I submit it to our congressman.
Rooster is symbolic of a turning point in the cosmic struggle between dark and light. On the Chinese zodiac, people born in the year of the rooster are supposed to be perfectionists, who are critical, egotistical, but also practical, loyal, and organized. In Norse mythology, 3 roosters crowing signaled the coming of Ragnarok, the end of times. And multiple religions use roosters in divination, a practice called electromancy. In the Japanese Shinto religion, the rooster is associated with the goddess Amaterasu, goddess of the sun and universe. Islam considers the rooster one of the 3 voices that are beloved by Allah, saying, "When you hear the crowing of cocks, ask for Allah's blessing, for they."
That's very interesting, because Jesus told
Judas.
No, not Judas. It was Thomas?
Peter.
Peter. That when he crows 3 times, that he would deny him. It's so tied up into religion, is it not?
Everything.
It's amazing.
Well, because everything in natural is a spiritual picture. Spiritual is a spiritual picture. Everything in the natural.
Well, I think everything in the spiritual is a representation of the natural.
Things in the natural.
Right.
That's what I mean.
But how amazing is that, really? I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of years of natural and spiritual life evolving around a chicken.
Have seen an angel. The Gospels of the Christian New Testament tell the story of Jesus telling Peter that before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Thus, the rooster can be seen as nefarious, but as the rooster crowing led Peter to repent, it is also seen as a symbol of grace and forgiveness. The rooster is, therefore, the symbol of St. Peter, and in the 9th century, Pope Nicholas I decreed that a rooster should be placed atop all churches as a reminder of Peter's denial of Christ.
How beautiful is that?
It's interesting.
Not only does the rooster still adorn the top of many European churches, but Nicholas's decree started the tradition of placing roosters on weather vanes. Chickens and their behavior become intimately connected to culture and have permeated language. To call someone a chicken is to call them a coward, a term that may date back to the 14th century. Versions of the story about the chicken named Chicken Little or Henny Penny, referring to a character who mistakenly believes a disaster is imminent, go back as much as 25 centuries. Chicken feed is an idiom going back to the 19th century that means a paltry sum. A politician promising prosperity may promise a chicken in every pot, a phrase that, while used in the 1928 U.S. presidential campaign, actually dates back at least to English King Henry IV. If a person's bad deeds come back to them, it is said that their chickens have come home to roost. And if the flavor of unusual food is difficult to describe, it is said to taste like chicken. If something is crooked, it is cockeyed. If a man cannot defend himself from a sharp-tongued wife, he is said to be henpecked, a reference to the fact that chickens themselves will establish an order within their community that is called a pecking order, itself a term.
Not henpecked.
Oh, no.
No. Why?
Term that is applied to any recognition of status within a group. A particularly attentive mother or matronly figure is called a mother hen, and if that woman is depressed that her children have grown, she is said to have empty nest syndrome. A leader who bullies people is called the cock of the walk, referring to a fighting chicken whose pen was called a walk. If you are barely making enough money to make ends meet, you are like a chicken scratching out a living. And if you're able to set some aside, then that is your nest egg. And if you can set quite a lot aside, then you are feathering your nest. If you place too much faith in one investment, you are putting all your eggs in one basket.
I cannot.
And if you're planning how to spend your investment before it produces returns, you are counting your eggs before they are hatched. If something is particularly difficult to find, it is as scarce as hen's teeth. And if it gets away, it has flown the coop. And for letting it go, you might be called a bird brain. If a person is particularly irascible, they may be called hard-boiled. And if they are disorganized, they are running around like a chicken with its head cut off. If they back out on a promise, they are said to chicken out. And a person who does that might be, by some, called a bad egg. And if they've seen better days, they might say that they are no spring chicken. When putting a plan into motion, you are hatching an idea. And if the plan succeeds, you have something to crow about. But if that plan fails, you might wind up with egg on your face. If something makes you particularly angry and you can't let it go, it is stuck in your craw. The story cannot be believed. It is a cock and bull story. If you are in need of a joke, try asking, Why did the chicken cross the road? And if you want to befuddle someone, ask them which came first, the chicken
or the egg.
Or the egg. As food, chicken is among the most ubiquitous foods in the world, part of almost any cuisine that includes meat. Worldwide, some 55 million chickens are eaten every day. But that was not always the case. In 19th century America, chickens were mostly used for eggs, making chicken as a meat rare, used for special occasions, and favored by the rich. Discovery of a way to synthesize vitamin D in the 1920s improved chicken production as it allowed chickens to thrive during winter, and improvements in breeding increased production through the 1930s. Eventually, large-scale production vastly increased the amount of chicken available. During the Second World War, meat and cheese were rationed in the United States, who was not only providing for its vastly expanded military, but helping to serve the needs of allies and liberated countries devastated by war. However, poultry, eggs, and fresh milk were not rationed, and consumption of poultry skyrocketed in America. In the 1990s, chicken surpassed beef as the most popular meat in Europe, largely due to fears of bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or mad cow disease. And in the United States, as drought had reduced beef stock and driven up prices versus poultry. In 2015, Americans ate an average of 92 pounds.
I would prefer chicken over beef.
Too.
I mean,
it's better for you.
It is better. I mean, it's better for you. Well,
red meat is not necessarily good for you, not in a huge quantity.
I just prefer the taste of it.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, yeah, there's something to be said for a good steak, right? We've had really good steak, but I prefer chicken. I just like the taste of it better. And I'm telling you right now, I could go for some chicken wings.
Pounds of chicken per person a year, a record. And the country produced about 90 billion eggs. The worldwide trend is nothing short of extraordinary. Eric Dorfman, director of the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh, did some math based on statistics from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and determined that in 2016, some
chicken feeders and waterers have not changed much. Have they?
I bet those are much better, though.
66 billion chickens were produced in the world, nearly 9 for every human on Earth. Just as shocking, however, is that just 55 years earlier, in 1961, that number was just 7.4 billion chickens, or about 1 chicken for every 400 people on Earth. And while chicken and poultry production faces certain obstacles, including questions of food safety and treatment of the animals, especially in the industrialized setting, chicken is going to continue to be a larger and larger part of the human food supply. Chicken is a relatively healthy form of protein with relatively lower amounts of saturated fat than alternatives and including important nutrients like the antioxidant selenium. Chicken is also relatively efficient to produce. It takes about 2 pounds of feed to produce a pound of chicken, whereas it takes about 7 pounds of feed to produce a pound of beef and 3 pounds of feed to produce a pound of pork. And chicken and eggs also release relatively low amounts of CO2 per gram of protein. And if chicken is going to continue to be a big part of humanity's future, it is a surprising part of the world's past. In 2007, scientists were able to determine the chemical composition of proteins that were found inside a 68 million year old Tyrannosaurus rex bone. And what they found was, and I quote, remarkably similar to chickens. Suggesting that chickens are the animal on this earth that is most similar to the Tyrannosaurus rex. And of course, suggesting that Tyrannosaurus rex tasted like chicken. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the History.
Wow, that was really cool, wasn't it?
That was cute.
We always say we have little dinosaurs running around in our backyard.
We do.
Because we do have chickens. And if you think that a dog is man's best friend, you are mistaken.
You've never had a chicken.
You've never had a chicken. Chickens are wonderful. Chickens are man's best friend. And as this video says, I mean, they've been with us for ever.
Long time.
Yeah.
Fun fact about chickens, if you put a little swing in their coop, they will swing on their swing.
Yeah,
really cool.
Chickens are interesting. I took a 2-liter water bottle, poked holes in it, and put little mealworms in it that were dried. They would kick it all around the yard just trying to get the mealworms out. But they'll give you a great breakfast. They're good friends, and you should
fun to watch.
They are, aren't they? And they really become each one of them have a characteristic to themselves, and we love our chickens. I'd encourage you to get chickens. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us at 2 Texas Lobsters React, and we will see you next time.
Bye, y'all.